Hello, thank you for joining us today to learn more about why you should vote no on Measure T, which will save Measure Y. Measure T is a developer's dream and a taxpayer's nightmare. Measure T stands for trouble and is nothing but terrible for San Mateo residents. So if any of you have seen the measure here, the ballot measure, it's even giving some license for favorable wording, shall we say, in ballot measures. This one is a doozy in terms of just how very misleading it is. And so the measure literally reads, shall the measure to allow for additional affordable housing for low and middle income residents and meet state housing requirements without raising taxes, while enhancing parks and open spaces, allowing existing residential neighborhoods to stay low density, and reducing traffic impacts while allowing future housing to be concentrated primarily downtown along the El Camino corridor near Caltrain stations where it is close to transit, jobs, infrastructure, and services be adopted. Well, that sounds incredible, doesn't it? And do we get a puppy and free ice cream and a pony too? It turns out that this is highly inaccurate and misleading, and that's being pretty generous. So let's break it down by phrase. So the first phrase here where it says to allow for additional affordable housing for low and middle income residents. The reality is that Measure T requires absolutely no affordable housing, again, with any 3 votes on council. And if any of you have been going to council meetings or planning commission meetings, you know that the council and commissioners and whatnot are under a lot of pressure to concede to developers. And San Mateo does not have a history of pushing back on developers and getting concessions. It typically goes the other way. It also removes those long-standing requirements for the actual construction of affordable housing in every new development. It also allows for the massive growth of unaffordable, i.e. luxury housing. And that's what this whole model is predicated upon, that you're going to build thousands and thousands of units of luxury housing with a lot of concessions and bonuses that will incentivize developers to build the still very expensive affordable housing. It's the only way you can get it done without providing subsidies. But along with that comes millions of square feet of office and other non-housing developments. So there are a lot of bad things that come along with Measure T that they choose not to talk about, and a lot of things that Measure T claims to do that it simply doesn't. Meeting state housing requirements. Measure Y already meets RHNA Cycle 6 requirements. RHNA is basically the mandated quota of housing that has to be zoned for and built within a given cycle. It's an 8-year cycle, Cycle 6, 2023 to 2031, so we're about a third of the way through that, and Measure Y already meets that. Attempting to look beyond 2030, which by the way is when Measure Y expires naturally, so this whole exercise is kind of unnecessary, is both reckless and unscientific. For example, the city projected a population the last time they updated their general plan. They projected that San Mateo would be 118,000 people by 2025. And right now it sits around 100,000 people. So we have no idea what it's going to look like. Without raising taxes, this one, even within this crazy wording, is even more of a doozy. Yes, technically, Measure T does not explicitly raise taxes within the context of this measure. However, anyone who pays attention to the general plan and looks at it knows that there's a massive unfunded burden of infrastructure and everything around all this additional development that will fall directly to taxpayers. So whether they end up being fees or bonds or taxes, it's still money out of residents' pockets. So flood-free San Mateo is a great example of that. It's a property tax now that we had to vote for and we had to support because the city kicked the can down the road on decades of maintenance of the lagoon, pump maintenance, pump upgrades and whatnot, ignored climate change. And that's not just a 10 or 20-year bond. It is permanent. So are you ready for crime-free San Mateo to have a dedicated funding source for the police and fire-free San Mateo for the fire department, or want water San Mateo? These are sort of facetious, but not really, because you can expect more and more of these for every existing public service that is currently handled by the city. While enhancing parks and open space, in reality, there's absolutely nothing in Measure T or the general plan that enhances open space that isn't already handled by Measure Y. Allowing existing residential neighborhoods to stay low density, again, no, and we need look no further than this. I'm sure most of you have seen the Pixar movie Up, which in and of itself was based upon a true story of a home in Seattle that I believe is there and surrounded by high rise as well. It's not fictional anymore or Seattle based. This is an actual project in San Mateo for a project that's in pipeline to be built, Block 20 downtown. It's 7 stories. And this rendering shows the building engulfing the Claremont House, the oldest home in San Mateo, and the building next to it, the Japanese American Cultural Center, I want to say it is. They're 2 of the oldest homes in San Mateo, and they'll absolutely be dwarfed by this project. And this project is directly across the street from single-family homes. So, so much for the idea that it's going to step down and blend with the neighborhoods. We had a lot of people talk about the Elks Club project, which is right on 20th Avenue, and that could be 6 stories. And we had a number of people attend our meetings that were expressing alarm around that. That happens all over San Mateo. Reducing traffic impacts. This is perhaps the most egregious lie because it worsens traffic, but instead leans on these rosy per capita numbers. It objectively and quantitatively, Measure T, makes traffic, noise, and air quality, among other things. It makes your life in general in San Mateo much, much worse. And then bringing it home while allowing future housing to be concentrated primarily downtown along the ECR corridor and near Caltrain stations where it is close to transit, jobs, infrastructure, and services. Again, the reality is that development is going to occur across most of the city, and any other form of development will be allowed at the whim of 3 council votes. So think of where those campaign donations are going. Think about council members that have higher aspirations within the city, the county, and the state, or higher. The development interests are funding all of that heavily, and they will do their bidding. Transit, we all know that is sorely, sorely lacking outside of Caltrain. Jobs, people are going to work where they work, and there's rarely a correlation between those two over any length of time. Infrastructure and services, Measure T completely ignores infrastructure and services. Again, the burden of those will fall to taxpayers, who will pay more and more for less and less. So given all of that, all the inaccuracies and misleading information in the ballot measure itself, why would you trust them and give them your vote? T doesn't do what it says it will, and it does a lot of bad things it says it won't. So we urge you to vote no on Measure T for many reasons. Key among those, again, any given council with just 3 votes. That 15% affordable housing becomes 0% or whatever they want. Follow the money. We showed you all the developers and how much they love Measure T and how much they want this to pass so they can build whatever they want. Measure Y and its predecessors have always been about trust and your voice versus the heights and densities aspect of it. You lose Measure Y, you have to trust developers. You have to trust construction unions and real estate interests. You have to trust the state and your council, and we don't, for good reason, as you can see. And then, as covered, the state laws that grant substantial height and density bonuses on top of Y. There is no need to overturn Y to support growth, especially when Y automatically sunsets in 2030. So we urge you, don't reward bad policy and process with your precious vote, and vote no on Measure T and save Measure Y. Thank you for your time. If you are interested in helping us out, you can visit our website at smartergrowthsm.com, lower left-hand corner, or you can email us at smartergrowthsm@gmail.com with any questions or if you want to get involved. Thanks for listening.